Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to the channel for this little installment of Ask Me Anything. It's kind of a show where, yes, if you wish to ask about movies and TV shows and stuff like that, you absolutely can, but it's kind of more of an open forum as well. If you want to talk about, blogging, podcasting, YouTubing, cameras, lights, microphones, technical stuff, computers, whatever, the floor is yours. What do you guys want to talk about? So that's what we're going to do here today. And I thought I would do this because I don't think we're going to do a John Campea show tomorrow. I think Ann and I are decided we're going to take off for the weekend. And so I don't think we're going to do a John Campea show tomorrow. So I thought, you know what? If I'm not going to do a John Campea show tomorrow, might as well just go ahead and do an Ask Me Anything today and see what you guys want to talk about. And that's what we are here and we are going to do. By the way, I watched, after we finished the John Campea show earlier today, I sat down and watched The Boys episode 4. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I think The Boys episode 4 might be a top 3 or 4 best episodes of The Boys so far. I'm not talking best 4 or 5 episodes of The Boys this season. I mean, overall. I couldn't believe, I had a lot of people writing to me saying, man, Anthony Starr is so good in this episode as the Homelander, and it might be his best performance. I'm like, really? What do they do with him? And my God, I think too many of us, and I've been guilty of this myself, like we watch a genre show because we love our genre stuff, right? And when something really good happens in genre, we say, that should get an Emmy. When really we're probably just overly excited that something really good has happened in one of our genre shows. But that being said, that Anthony Starr performance in that episode, first of all, he's always great. Anthony Starr is always great as Homelander in all 4 seasons, right? He's always great. But my goodness, the performance he gives in this episode, it might actually, like, not just genre fanboy gasming out, I mean, actually be a legit Emmy contender. It was just fabulous. This season of The Boys has been so good. By the way, did you see that the ratings for The Boys is up 21% over last year? I saw the news a little bit too late to include into the John Campea show earlier today, but The Boys viewership which is already like the biggest thing that people watch on Amazon. It's actually up 21% over last year, which is amazing. The show just keeps getting better. The viewership just keeps getting better. It's awesome to see. So anyway, yeah. All right, guys. Let's get around now to why we are here, which is to take your thoughts, comments, and questions. If you have a thought, comment, or question about anything at all, as long as it's appropriate, go ahead and use the super chat feature and send it in. The super chats are currently open. I'll let you know when I'm about to turn them off because they do get full pretty quick. But right now they are open. And let's just hop into it, shall we? Let's get to it. We're going to start off with Big Cookie, who says, earlier, you said you figured out the twist in Sugar before it actually happened. I did. I think it was episode 4 that I figured out the twist. What gave it away? When did you know? I'm going to be careful about how I say this because I know a lot of people still haven't watched Sugar, and I really like the show, so I want more people to watch it. So I want to be careful how I answer this because I don't want to give away what the twist is. But I think the very first scene of Sugar kind of lets you know this individual is special, right? If you saw the show, the very first scene and sequence it makes it pretty clear this is an exceptional individual. I think the meeting, also the big by invitation meeting of all of those individuals getting together, also gave something away that this is something very different. And then when one by one, they would go upstairs to have these private interviews, it was really in there that it started to come together for me. And it was in episode 4, because Ann was watching it with me, that I said out loud, I think he's blank. And like, I wasn't 100% sure about it, but I said, I think he might be blank. And sure enough, then you get to the second, I think it was in the second to last episode, they give it away. And I'm like, holy crap, it was. So that's kind of what given me. By the way, guys, the Colin Farrell show, if you want a good double header of Colin Farrell, because we got Penguin coming up and that looks amazing. But if you want another good shot of some Colin Farrell, go and check out Sugar. I think it's on Apple TV Plus. Correct me if I'm wrong in the live chat, guys. I think it's an Apple TV Plus show. I think that's where I watched it. But go and check it out. It's not the best show on TV. It's not going to end up being a top 5 best show of the year, but I thought it was very good, and I really enjoyed it. So go check it out. All right. Next up, we've got, that was Big Cookie. So next we got Big Mouth Stan, who writes, the fact that I both simultaneously loathe but also have empathy for this character just goes to show you that Homelander is such a great character. It's true. Like, he is the most loathsome, horrible being. But you can't help, if you have a heart, to feel a little bit of empathy for the character about how he got there. And like this episode 4, isn't the first time. Like, they've set up before that, you know, Homelander, as much as he's the most powerful being in the world, I mean, other than Soldier Boy, apparently. Other than Soldier Boy, being the most powerful being in the world, he also got dealt a bad hand, man. And terrible things happened to him. And I don't feel empathy for him as a man, but you can't help but feel empathy for how he got there. And what a tragic story. So, like, Homelander is all at the same time this horrible, vile villain. But also his story is that of a tragedy. It's also a tragedy at the same time. It is such a brilliantly written show. Such a brilliantly written show that can make you feel all these different things at all these different times. I also love what they're doing with Starlight, by the way. That even like in the world of the boys, which is very much like a real world, like when you find out the history between her and Firecracker, I think that's the character's name, Firecracker, and you realize how she really hurt Firecracker. I mean, years ago, but still, that even the best of characters are flawed and make mistakes and all that kind of, it's just such a good show, man. It is such a great show. I'm absolutely loving it. All right. Thanks for that, Big Mouth Stan. Next up, Dwayne writes, Canada versus Argentina soccer match is underway for the Copa America. Let's hope Canada takes it. Anything can happen in soccer. Anything can happen in soccer. That is true. Do I believe Canada has at all a shot against Argentina? No, I really don't. But hey, hope springs eternal. Let's see what happens. All right. Thanks for that, Dwayne. Next up, John Redcorn writes, thoughts on Charles Barkley retiring from TV next year. Is that official? Did he actually say that? That's going to be it, that he's retiring from TV. If that is what he said, and I don't know that that's what he said, but if it is what he said, that he's retiring, good on him, man. Listen, I've never agreed with most of what Sir Charles has always said or what his opinions were, but he was so good. That's not what makes me a fan of people. What makes me a fan of people is not people I agree with. That's fine. It's great if I agree with somebody, but that's not what makes me a fan. What makes me a fan is, are you really good at expressing your view, whether it's a view I agree with or not? Are you really good at expressing your view in such a way that I find engaging and makes me better understand why I agree with you or why I disagree with you? And Charles Barkley had this facade about him that he's so good at, of really having an opinion and great at expressing it. Some of you may have heard this story before, but I was actually once approached about possibly doing a movie review show likened unto Siskel and Ebert with me and Charles Barkley. I kid you not, 100% true. For those of you who've watched me long enough, you remember we talked about this a long time ago. This was back in the AMC days. I was approached said, what would you think about doing what would you think about doing a movie review show with Charles Barkley? And at the time I said no. Cause nothing against Charles Barkley at all. It's just, and not that it would have, even if I had said yes, it wasn't guaranteed that would have happened at all. They just approached me, pitched the idea, all that kind of stuff. And I originally said no, because I was working myself silly. I didn't know what the advantage would be. I thought, and at the time I mistakenly thought, what would be interesting about hearing Charles Barkley's view on movies? Years later, I really changed my mind about that. I think, you know what? That would have been great. That would have been great, actually. But I like Charles Barkley a lot. I thought he was a dynamic, incredible, awesome basketball player. He's been an incredible commentator on the league. If he's retiring next year from TV, it's our loss. But I mean, he's had such a great career, has made so much money. Why not? Hats off to Sir Charles Barkley. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got, that was John Redcorn, right? Yes. Next up, we got Mr. Hank Dunn, who says Starlight had every right to do what she did. Absolutely, she did. You take my private medical records and air them out publicly? Absolutely, she was completely justified. Mr. Hank Dunn also said A-Train is going to join the boys. I think that's pretty clear that's where they're heading. Or he's going to die before he gets the chance. Or he's going to die before. Now, I'm not going to go into the events of this episode for those of you who haven't had a chance to watch it yet. But it's been clear in the first 3 episodes, and even going into last season, they've started a bit of a character shift for A-Train that I think has been done very well, very slowly, very gradually. They've been doing great with it. But I think, while I do believe it's possible he joins the boys at some point, I think it might be a bigger chance that he dies before that ever happens. Then again, who knows? A lot of possibilities still on the table. All right. Next up, Rachel Knight writes, often hear about movies ruined by the ending. What are movies saved by the ending for you? For me, Meet the Robinsons is one for sure. Meet the Robinsons. I'm not from, which one is Meet the Robinsons? Anyway, that ending is beautiful. Meet the Robinsons. Guys in the live chat, help me out. Which one is Meet the Robinsons? Who's in that? It's a Disney movie? I don't recall Meet the Robinsons, to be honest. It's a Disney animated movie. The Jen Abides. I like that name. The Jen Abides is saying it's an animated movie. I'm not familiar with it. Here's the thing. While it is possible that an ending can ruin a movie, I find that for the most part, they don't. Like, I've seen movies with terrible endings, but if the rest of the entire movie was really good, I'll go, yeah, they totally botched the landing. They didn't stick the landing, but overall the movie was quite good. It's been rare for me that a terrible ending has ruined an otherwise great movie. Like, there have been terrible endings to movies that weren't that good in the first place, but I don't know that for me, there have been many examples of a terrible ending that ruined an otherwise great movie. That being said, I honestly can't think of a situation where a movie had a great ending and that salvaged an otherwise terrible movie for me. You know what I mean? Like, if a movie was bad 3/4 of it, it's just bad. It doesn't matter to me if you have a great ending. It doesn't save the movie. If I have to sit through an hour and a half of terrible movie that I really don't like, and I'm bored and I'm rolling my eyes, sticking the last 15 minutes or so it might take it from being a 2 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10, but it wouldn't save the movie for me. So I don't know. We'll see. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. Maybe I'll think of one later though. It's a really interesting question though, Rachel, but I can't think of one off the top of my head, to be honest with you. All right. Let's see. Next up, we go to, where are we? Jacob Hirsch writes, I get all the Lady Deadpool theories, but why is nobody saying Morena Baccarin? Actually, somebody did bring up Morena Baccarin on yesterday's open mic, as a matter of fact. Morena Baccarin's Vanessa. She would make the most sense for Wade as a character to meet. Yeah, maybe. Again, I think everybody is way overthinking the whole Lady Deadpool thing, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the movie is Deadpool and Wolverine, not Deadpool, Wolverine, and Lady Deadpool. Lady Deadpool is going to be my guess is a complete quick cameo in and out of the movie. So it really doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's playing it. Like, yeah, maybe just for fun, it could be Blake Lively, but it won't really matter. I mean, because it's going to be in and out. And I was like, that was fun. Or it could be Taylor Swift, because, oh my God, most popular music star in the world, in and out. There you go. But yeah, Marina Baccarin, like a Marina Baccarin Vanessa variant as some other universe's Lady Deadpool. Yeah, that totally works. Somebody brought that up on the show the other day, and it would totally work. But again, it's not really important because the character's going to come in and the character's going to go out. I believe, at any rate, unless we find out otherwise. So I don't really think it's that big of a deal. But yes, some other people have been bringing up Marina Baccarin's Vanessa, and that would make sense too. That would perfectly fit. Even though she's already in the movie as Vanessa. But, you know, we'll see where they go with that. All right. Next up, we've got J. Jav Dav writes, what are your thoughts on The Passion of the Christ? Personally, I think it's a banger. Thank you for everything that you and the crew do for us. That's a movie I haven't watched in a long time, a very, very long time, but I liked it when I saw it. I liked it. Like, I thought it was a very well-made movie. I hate faith-based movies. I've hated faith-based movies ever since I was in seminary and in Bible college. I've always thought faith-based movies suck, but there is the odd exception. I thought Passion of the Christ was a well-made film. Again, it's been forever since I've seen it, but I do remember I liked it the first time I saw it. All right. Let's see. Next one up, we've got Isaac Sanchez writes, I just read that Deadpool and Wolverine will be set 6 years after the second film, and Hugh Jackman wanted a Deadpool and P.T. Barnum musical. Any thoughts? I don't believe that. I mean, you might be right. Maybe that does say that somewhere, but I don't believe it. I'd actually have to see Hugh Jackman saying very seriously, I wanted it to be a cross between Deadpool and The Greatest Showman. Other than that, I don't believe that's true at all. I mean, being set 6 years after the movie being set 6 years after the last Deadpool, I mean, hasn't it been? When did Deadpool 2 come out? Let me look this up here. Deadpool 2. It's got to be close to 6. Yeah, it was 6 years ago. So them saying this is 6 years later makes sense. I mean, it's been 6 years. So if that's the case, then it lines up perfectly with what our timeline is. All right. Next up, we go to John Redcorn writes, what are the chances the symbiotes being sent to Earth in the Venom trailer are from Null? Do you think he'll appear in the film or post credits? Null is way too, personally, I think Null is way too high concept to bring into this. For those of you who don't know, Null is basically a god. He's the god of the symbiotes. As a matter of fact, in Thor: Love and Thunder, the sword that Gore the God Butcher, Christian Bale, gets, in the comics, that's from Null, right? That's from Null, this character Null. I think it's far too high concept. I really do. I mean, like, going from, you know, these savage alien creatures to straight up God level dude, I just don't see it being an issue, because like, you bring in Null into it, that's something like the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe has to stand against. It's not something that that Venom stands against. So yeah, I don't think so. I don't know that they don't. Let's be clear. Maybe they do, but I think it would be a mistake if they did. So I'm going to guess that they are not going to do that. I don't think Null's going to be there. Again, could be wrong. Maybe they surprise us and do it, but I'm just saying I'm going to guess that they don't. All right. Next up, Jerome writes, who do you think will die this season in The Boys? All right. The one person I think dies is, I think A-Train dies. I think they're building up to a very tragic death for A-Train. By the way, I don't know that they are. I'm just guessing. So I think they're building up to a very tragic death for A-Train. I honestly think just about everybody is on the potential menu, though. except for Homelander and Billy. I think Homelander and Butcher are the only two that are completely off the menu. We know we're going to get, I mean, they can die in the final season, but I think they easily, both of them get to the final season. They both get to the final season. One guy that I would say is very unlikely dies is also Huey. I don't think Huey dies. I mean, I don't think he's as untouchable as Homelander and Butcher are, but I think right below that. But other than that, Kimiko, Frenchie, Starlight, I definitely think Firecracker dies. I think easily she dies. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Sister Sage dies, I think, because honestly, clearly, they made it. We've all been suspecting she's got her own designs and her own plans, and that kind of became a little bit more clear, I think, in episode 4. So I think at some point, she's going to get caught with her proverbial pants down and probably die, so there's that. I don't think Bobby dies. I don't think Robert Singer dies. Newman may die. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, but I definitely think A-Train. I think definitely A-Train, and probably at least one of the boys other than Butcher, and probably not Huey. But Mother's Milk, Frenchie, Kimiko, Starlight, I think they're all possibilities. I think they're all possibilities. Now, Jose is saying in the live chat, Homelander dies by a clone of Homelander in the comic books. That's not, because remember, in the comic books, for those of you who don't know, Black Noir was actually a Homelander clone, a more powerful Homelander clone. Homelander never knew that, though. And then the reason Vought had a slightly more powerful clone of Homelander in the 7 was as a failsafe for Homelander. In case they ever couldn't keep control of Homelander, they had Black Noir, a Homelander clone, ready to take him out and kill him. So they've clearly already deviated from that in the comics, right? Black Noir was not a Homelander clone. Obviously, the Black Noir we have now is not a Homelander clone. So I don't know what they're going to do with that moving forward, but they clearly already deviated from that. I think it's a very good thing that they deviated. Personally, I think it's a good change, but we'll see what they do. All right. Next up, we've got, that was Jerome. Next up, we got Admiral Abbar, who writes, have you ever thought of inviting other streamers / media to discuss topics? No. For example, Surge, I'm going to mispronounce that, so I'm not going to bother trying because I don't want to offend anybody, of Cold Crash Pictures to talk to. I've never heard of the individual. Basically, no, I had every once in a while, I'll make every once in a blue moon, I'll make an exception for, like, you know, Sean or Jeff or something like that. But generally speaking, it's people I know and I'm already connected to. But I developed a theory that I think is true. Back when I was at AMC, and that was that at AMC, we didn't bring in a ton of guests. I mean, we did for a period of time, but eventually we stopped bringing in a ton of guests. And we started setting a regular rotation about who was on the show and who was not, because I developed the belief that, especially on the internet, people tune into a show to see what it is, to see what they're familiar with. You know, as a matter of fact, when I left AMC, I left them a couple of pieces of advice that they summarily dismissed, and hence the show fell off a cliff as far as its ratings goes, and then it drove it into the ground. But two pieces of advice that I gave them that they ignored was, number one, make Perry Nemiroff the host of Movie Talk. I think it was a horrible mistake for them to make Mark Ellis the host. John, I thought you liked Mark Ellis. Oh, I don't just like Mark Ellis. I think the dude's a goddamn superstar. The reason I didn't think they should have had Mark Ellis as the main host of the show is because they would be tying Mark Ellis's hands. Randy Moss, right? Anybody who knows sports, Randy Moss, one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, right? Ergo, one of the greatest football players of all time. If they said to you, let's make Randy Moss the quarterback, be like, well, what are you talking about? He's like one of the greatest wide receivers ever. That's where he will be his most effective. If you make Randy Moss the quarterback, you're limiting what he's able to do. And I always thought that, the person in the main chair on Movie Talk had to be the facilitator, right? The one to, yes, set all the context, all that kind of stuff. That's what I would do on the show. But then be the facilitator of then sending it over to the other guests on the panel and facilitating them and all that, passing the ball, right? And Mark Ellis, I think, was purely the most talented guy on our panel staff of being able to catch the ball and run with it. Just give really good, insightful stuff, but be absolutely hilarious while he was doing it. And what I told them was, if you make Mark Ellis the main chair, you're tying his hands. He's not going to be able to be at his best because you're making him be the facilitator, and you're going to limit him. And the show overall will not be as good as it could be if you had him as a panelist as opposed to the facilitator. You will make the show worse by not having Mark out there in the wide slot running wide receiver. If you don't have him at wide receiver, the show's going to get worse because he's that good. But they ignored me. They made Mark the main host, and he did a great job, yes, but he couldn't fully be Mark. He couldn't be fully Mark Ellis. And I think the show suffered as a result of it. I think if they had kept going with Movie Talk with Perry Nemiroff in the main chair as the main facilitator and Mark Ellis as one of the main panelists with his hands untied, I think that show could have kept going. I really, really do. Again, Mark did a good job as the host. But that was having Mark do a good job as host was at the sacrifice of him being an MVP out on the wide receiver slot, like being the panelist. So he didn't have to worry about his time about being the facilitator. He could be Mark Ellis. And I thought that not letting the MVP do the MVP things that he was capable of doing, I think that hurt the show, even though he did a good job. But I think having Perry as the main host, who also would have done a great job because she's wonderful, Mark Ellis as your main panelist. And so that's the first thing I told them. The first thing I told them was have Perry Nemiroff be the main chair host and keep Mark as a panelist because he's your MVP. They didn't listen to me. The second thing I told them to do was don't rotate the panel. Set your panel and leave it. Don't have different people coming in and out every day. We played around with that when I was still hosting it. And what we ultimately found out is people online, and this is where we get around to answering your question. It's a very long-winded way of doing it, admittedly, but this is an informal Ask Me Anything show. So bear with me as I take my time. But I said, what I found worked best is people on the internet, when they tune in, they want to see the people they know. They come to our show to see Mark in that chair, Schnepp in that chair, whoever in this chair, and whoever in this chair. If suddenly you make it that every time somebody tunes in, it's a completely different set of 4 people, I think you're going to start to lose people's interest. I think that people get comfortable with the show, which is why, Charles Barkley on TNT, that worked so well because you had, Ernie and Jet and Shaq and Chuck. You always knew you were going to get that. Yes, every once in a while they had to plug in a substitute, but for the most part, that's what you always got. And people online like to tune in and see what they're comfortable with. Anyway, all that is to say why, really in general, I decided a while ago for my show, I wasn't going to really do a lot of guests just because I don't think people tune into my show for the guests. And that's also why I don't do guest spots on other people's shows, because I don't think anybody's interested in seeing me on somebody else's show. Like, I can go and be a guest on somebody else's show, but I'm not why they're there. They're there to see the real host of the show, not me. I'm just a distraction. So I've never really done other people's. I usually turn down other people's shows too. So my thing, I like to make it as regular as possible. Normally, Monday through Wednesday or Thursday. I mean, it's always me, Ray, and Jonathan. Really, it's me. Jonathan's here to be the technical director. Ray is here to be our graphics and supplemental media guy. But I like them chiming in every once in a while. But normally, it's me and Rob. And then on Fridays, it's me and Chris. And that's kind of set and regular. I mean, those of you who watch the show regularly, you know Rob hasn't been around for a number of weeks. He's off doing a big project, an audio drama project that's going to be awesome when he's finally all done with it. But he's working on that, going to be continuing to work on that for a number of weeks. So we're not going to see Rob around here for a while. But that's why I normally like to just have a normal thing. So no, I'm not interested in having a bunch of random rotating people in and out. Again, I'll make the odd exception for people that I know, whether it's a Jeff or it's a Scott Mance, or every once in a while I'll make the odd exception for that. But no, like definitely not people I don't know. And believe me, I've been brought a lot of people saying, hey, have this person on your show. I'm like, no. I'm not doing them any favors. I'm not doing me any favors by doing it. I just don't think it's a good idea. So no, I don't have other people on the show generally. All right. Let's see. Next up. Thanks for letting me give a real long-winded answer to that. All right. Next up, we've got Isaac Martinez writes, what is the most controversial movie ever made in your opinion? For me, it's Sallow 120 Days of Sodom. Never heard of it. Honestly, I mean, and that's probably a little movie probably most people have never heard of. For something to be the most controversial means you got a lot of people on both sides of it, right? Like a movie that everybody hates, that's not controversial. Everybody hates it. Controversial to me means that there's a legitimate controversy, that there's people on both sides of it, of an issue, and angrily debating it. So for me, I actually think the most controversial wide release film is probably I think Bowling for Columbine. Because that was a movie that brought a lot of stuff out, and a lot of people that a lot of people got very, very like trenched in on both sides and caused a lot of controversy. So I would say for me, it's probably Bowling for Columbine. Amina's saying never heard of it. I think it won an Academy Award. It was a, what's his name? Moore. What's his name? Why am I freezing on Moore's name? What's his first name? The guy who made Bowling for Columbine. He makes a bunch of documentaries. Michael Moore. Thank you, Drew 2037. It's a Michael Moore film called Bowling for Columbine. I think it won the Academy Award that year. It's an excellent documentary. But again, I think that one was probably the one that would fall under the category of most controversial. All right. Mark W. gifted a membership. Thank you, Mark W. Appreciate that, man. All right. Next up, we've got Future Millionaire writes, John, did you ever see the commercials for the mobile game Squad Busters? No. The marketing team did an awesome job, spared no expense. Yeah, no, I wish I could give more insightful commentary, but I've never seen the ad. So no, I did not see it. So I can't give commentary on it. All right. Bobby Jackson writes, one of two. Hey, John, I respect you saying you'll stop watching The Acolyte after next week if you're not enjoying it. Why do you think people hate watch shows? Doesn't that send the wrong message? Because, two of two, hate watch still adds to viewership numbers, and they clearly don't value complaints over views / dollars, or they wouldn't be doing a Ray movie. I've never understood the concept of hate watching. Never understood the concept of it. Because all of us, regardless of how much money each one of us has or has not, we all share one common resource: time. And we all have a limited amount of time. We have a limited amount of time. Why would I spend some of my to all of us, time is an incredibly precious resource. So why would I spend my allotment of this incredibly precious resource, time, that you never get back? You never get time back. Why would I spend my time watching something that I already know I don't like, when I could be using my time watching or doing something I do like? So I've never understood that. Now, in the online world, it's a little bit different. People like to hate watch because hate gets clicks. Hate gets clicks. And I'll tell you something, I talked to one of my friends today that is actually, this is kind of hastening my heading towards my retirement and stopping doing this. It is extremely disheartening to me. Like if I go over and check my content stuff, where's my okay. Do you know what my number one watched video was in the last couple of days? I did, amidst all the videos, because I've put out like 15 to 22 videos in the last couple of days. And almost all of them are about things I'm excited about, and almost all of them are about things that I like. But because it was the day after a new episode of The Acolyte came out, I had to do a video about The Acolyte and how disappointed I was in it and how much I think the show's getting really terrible. And my video about how bad I think The Acolyte is by far the most viewed video I've had in the last couple of days. And to me, I'll be honest with you, it's quite frankly depressing. It's not depressing that I had to do the video. Like, I'm in the movie and TV space. Every once in a while, there's going to be something I really dislike and I need to do, and I need to cover it as a topic. That's fine. That's fine. What is depressing to me is that the one negative video, because I'm going to have to do negative videos every once in a while. That's life. That's the entertainment business. What is really disappointing to me and is borderline depressing to me is that out of all the videos that I did about things that I love and things that I like, things I'm excited for, blah, 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 and they all did fine. We had good views on our videos this week, but by far the biggest one, the one that got the most clicks, was the negative video. That legitimately makes me want to quit. It legitimately makes me want to quit. I didn't quit. Not yet. But that's the state of the online world right now. Hate gets clicks. Out of all the videos I've done this week, the most watched one, the one people wanted to click on most, was the one when it was about something that I really disliked. The new episode of Acolyte. And it's terrible. It is. The Acolyte episode 4 was completely terrible. If you liked it, that's great. I'm not trying to yuck on your yum. I'm glad you liked it if you did. But for me, I thought it was really, really terrible. And so I did a video about how I thought this thing was terrible. It's just depressing to me that then becomes the thing that's got that leans towards, celebrate or hate. The one that leans towards hate, that's the one that got more clicks than anything else. When you understand that, it kind of becomes clear why it's so seductive, like the dark side of the Force. It's literally the embodiment of the dark side of the Force. It's seductive. It's quicker. It's easier, the way Yoda described it. Quicker, easier, seductive, all that kind of stuff that Star Wars terminology uses for the dark side. That's what it is. When you understand YouTube creators who can't get clicks any other way, because nobody watches them otherwise, how alluring and how tempting it can be to just, hey, I made this hate video and it got a lot of clicks. I should do another hate video tomorrow. And then I should do another hate video the day after that. And then I should do 2 hate videos the day after that. Then I'll do 3 hate videos the day after that, and then another hate video the day after that, and then another hate video the day after that, because that's what's getting me my clicks. I have never been one that cared much about clicks. Otherwise, I would do fucking trailer reactions. And again, nothing against trailer reactions or trailer reactors. It's just not my thing. That's all. Huge amount of respect for people who do it well. Big respect for people who do it well. People like Greg Alba and Day One and those types of people. Big respect to those people. But it's not my thing. But that's why I don't do that, because it's not my thing. But if I cared really about the clicks, I would do a lot of trailer reactions. I do reactions to other reactions. I do reactions of reactions of reactions. I do tons of reactions because I know that gets a lot of click, but it's just not my thing, so I don't do it. But I'll tell you, man. So for a regular viewer, I'll never understand hate watching because you're just losing your time when you could be spending your time doing something you enjoy. For content creators, I get the seduction. I get the allure. I get the temptation because I look at my analytics, and even though I've made a ton of videos this week about the things I'm excited about things that I think are great news, about things that I really liked, the video that by far got the most clicks was the one video out of the 30 or 40 videos I've done all week that was about something that I hated, the Acolyte episode 4, and that's the one that got the most views. And it's depressing. It's really, really depressing to me that that's the state of the online world. And that there are content creators out there who build their entire model around that. Yeah, because you go to a lot of YouTube channels, right? And all their every video on their front page is, this sucks, this person's awful, I hate this, we hate that, everybody should hate this sucks, this is terrible, this person's a demon, blah, blah, blah. Like every single thing on their page, nothing is about what they love. Everything's about what they hate. They're doing it because they're shills. They're shilling and prostituting themselves to hate. And I get it. I get it. That's what gets you attention in this space. That's what gets you clicks in this space. And so I understand. And that's why I want to quit. I'm so over this. I've made enough money. I've got all my investments all lined up. I got my retirement all set. I'm good to go. And I'm just really hanging in there for Superman. I really want to see James Gunn's Superman, and maybe then go through to the end of the year in 2025. We'll see. But it's really sad seeing the state of creators online, because it's just a bunch of prostitutes and whores who whore themselves out for hate clicks. And what's even sadder than that is the fact that I get why they do it, because that's the state of the online audience too. The online audience is drawn to hate content. And it's just something that I'm ready to not be a part of anymore. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe I'm just in a particularly bitter mood about it, because I saw that out of all the content, and I think we've made some really good content this week, the thing that got the most attention was the thing that I was mad at, the hate video about how much I hated the Acolyte. And that's the one that got the attention. And I'm just being open with you here, guys. What's the term they use? Real talk, kids. Real talk. I'm just open my heart here. It's really depressing to me that that's the state of the world. And I don't know if I want to be a part of that online world anymore. And that's why, yes, about a little over a year ago, I really started targeting, 2025 as being, I think we're going to work till then, and then I'm probably going to get out. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, let's keep going here. Now that we got that depressing thing behind us. Next up, Bobby Jackson again writes, Paul Walter Hauser really is having some kind of year. He absolutely is. He recently signed on to another 2 projects, a Bruce Springsteen movie and now an action comedy film for MGM with Mark Wahlberg. Give me 1 second here. Let me bring up, because I don't think there has ever been an actor that has had the month or 2 that Paul Walter Hauser has had. Because if we go over, right now they've only got 5 things listed as upcoming. me go to this. Oh, that's not working. Give me a second. They got 5 things listed as upcoming. The Instigators, Naked Gun we've known about, Fantastic Four we've known about, Press Your Luck we just talked about. I don't know what Balls Up is, but like 4 of these things all just got announced in the last couple of weeks. Like whoever his agent is deserves a raise. Whoever his agent is completely deserves a raise. It's absolutely crazy how good his agent is doing. And by the way, it's not like Paul Walter Hauser's a lump of coal that can't act. He's a great performer. He's an Emmy-winning actor. He's fabulous. He deserves all the success he's having. But man, his agent is doing a hell of a job. All right, guys, listen, I'm going to turn off the super chats here. And as I turn off the super chats, we're going to take a quick break for a second and pay some of the bills around here by thanking the sponsors of today's episode, our friends at Gametime and Liquid IV. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Gametime. My wife Ann and I love going to events, whether they're comedy shows, concerts, an LA Lakers game. I mean, just the other night we went to go see Ronnie Chang and it was awesome. We love having these new experiences and new memories. And our sponsor Gametime makes getting tickets for concerts and events faster and easier, even if you don't buy tickets right away. Because prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer you get to the show start time. With killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying event tickets. I couldn't believe how easy and most importantly, intuitively, the entire app works. Finding the event I was looking for couldn't have been easier. The way it lays out the map of the venue, letting you know exactly where the seats are that you're looking for, and how easy the process was to choose and buy those tickets. So don't worry if you think you're too late to get tickets to that big event you and your friend want to go to. They have last minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever. So guys, take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Campea for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Campea, C-A-M-P-E-A, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Guys, we want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Liquid IV. You know, it seems like summer's just designed to make us thirsty, whether it's camping, hiking, playing sports, and staying hydrated is the key to making the most of every moment. Because summer requires extraordinary hydration that's built for everyday dehydrating moments. Liquid IV hydrates me with benefits like electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients. With 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, plus 8 vitamins and nutrients in a single stick, it's clearly why Liquid IV is the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. It has 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. Just tear, pour, and live more. Just 1 stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. With 8 vitamins and nutrients, non-GMO and free from gluten, dairy, and soy. There's no artificial colors or sweeteners, and it's got 4 delicious sugar-free flavors: white peach, green grape, raspberry melon, and lemon lime. So turn your ordinary water into extraordinary hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code Campea at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code Campea at liquidiv.com. And thank you to our friends at Gametime and Liquid IV for sponsoring today's episode. All right, guys, with that down, let's get back over to your questions here, shall we? We're going to pick things up with Murray Reich, who writes, will you really tap out of the Acolyte? Yeah. I'm going to ride the ship till the end. Like they say in Bad Boys, we ride together, we die together. But to be honest, it might be a painful watch. Yikes. Yeah, so what I've said before is that if the Acolyte, the next episode of the Acolyte doesn't show a definitive improvement, I will probably tap out after that. Now, what that could mean, what I've done at other shows I've tapped out of, is I've tapped out of and then gone back and then watched all the remainder of it, but just never talked about it. Like, because here's the thing, what I don't want to do is week after week after week, just cry and bitch and moan and complain and shit about a show that I don't like, right? I rather spend my time talking about things I do like. And if it's become clear to me that this ship's not turning around and this show's not getting any better, then there's no point in me keep watching, because I don't want to week after week talk about how bad this show is. So what I might do, what I did in the case of Ahsoka, like once it became clear to me that Ahsoka wasn't very good, I just stopped talking about Ahsoka. I mean, I could have done the horror thing, which is week after week talk about how bad this thing is, but I just kind of eventually stopped talking about it, and I didn't watch it every time a new episode dropped. So I kind of half tapped out. I still went back and watched the rest of it, but I didn't talk about it. So with The Acolyte, if it doesn't get any better in the next episode, and I don't just mean a little bit better, I mean show a lot of promise. If the next episode doesn't show a lot of promise, that gives me hope that I could talk positively about it in some way, then I'm just going to stop talking about the show. I might go back and catch up on the episodes later, but just because it's Star Wars, but I'll definitely stop talking about it, because I don't want to spend my time on my show just going back just so I can hate talk about something. You know, if I hate something, I want to move on and watch something that I like. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. Next up, we've got Hayden Wilson. Any upcoming albums you are looking forward to? None off the top of me. Listen, as much as I've always played, you guys probably know I've played in a lot of bands, and there was actually a point in my life that I really thought seriously about pursuing music as a full-time career and all that kind of stuff. Then I came to the realization that, you know what? I'm just not good enough to do that. And that's fine. I was perfectly good with it. I'm not a bad little composer. I'm not a bad little musician, but I was never going to be good enough to actually make a serious career out of it. So I had to abandon it. But I don't really follow the music scene a lot today, to be honest with you. I'm far too obsessed with movies and TV shows and things like that. So, and role-playing games, and I'm way too obsessed with and playing poker. Like, I'm just way too into that stuff to really follow. So I don't really have a lot of upcoming albums that I'm really paying attention to. Like, when an album comes out that I really like, I get excited about it, but I don't really keep it on my radar what albums are or are not coming out. You know what I mean? That's just where I'm at in my life right now. All right. Thanks for the question, Hayden. Alex Von Gollum writes, spent last weekend in Middle Earth with the fan screenings of The Two Towers and Return of the King. That's a good way to spend your time, my friend. The opening of the former with Gandalf versus the Balrog and the Khazad-dûm theme is exhilarating. I'll tell you what, I loved the way The Two Towers starts is so brilliant, right? Because obviously in Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf goes over the ledge with the Balrog, right? Okay, then the movie continues on, whatever. And the way Two Towers starts with just this aerial shot over the mountains, right? And then hearing audio, I mean, it's a brilliant creative decision by Peter Jackson. Hearing the audio cues from the first movie of, you know, the dialogue with Gandalf, and you hear the Balrog roar and blah, blah. And then it goes into the mountain. We pick up on that scene again, see him go over the edge, and then it picks up with them falling, continuing to battle as they fall. It's such a great intro, such a fabulous way to start that movie. It was just one of the many brilliant things about the film, and that's one of the reasons why Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. It still shocks me how many people are surprised when I mention, did you know that all three of the Lord of the Rings films were nominated for Best Picture before Return of the King finally won? Like, a lot of people still don't realize that to this day, that every single one of those movies got at least nominated for Best Picture. Then ultimately, the Return of the King won Best Picture. Won 11 Academy Awards. 11 Academy Awards. No film in Hollywood history has ever won more Academy Awards than Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King did. 11. Two other films also had 11, but none have ever made more or won more. It's a big feather in this cap for Middle-earth there. All right. Next up, Spanky the Keeper writes, if you could go on a trip to do anything with your best friend, what would you do? I'm trying to make his year fantastic, but I'm clueless. Well, I mean, my ideal trip or the other person's ideal trip? Because I think for me, it would be like a really good 3-week trip to Italy. I think after I retire, that's definitely something I'm going to do. For those of you who don't know, by heritage, I am Italian. My real name is Giovanni. My dad came over on the boat. My whole family on that side is all Italian. I've always wanted to go. And my wife has been to Italy 3 times. I, who am Italian, have never been. So for me, it would be a good 3-week trip to Italy, I think. That's what I'd like to do. All right. Next up. Let's see here. B Town writes, with The Boys being fantastic, potentially Deadpool being another banger, do you see future comic book movies / shows going the darker route? Not necessarily. Like Deadpool and The Boys are just being true to the nature of their source material. Much like, let's say, Captain America Civil War, while very different from the original Civil War in the comic books, was still very true to the nature of the comic books and became a big, massive, huge hit. The key is not going darker. If the key was going darker, then a lot of other darker R-rated comic book kind of movies would have been successful in the past. And the reality is, until Deadpool came along, R-rated comic book movies did not do well, right? The key, again, at the end of the day, is not which formula do you use, darker, lighter. No, the key is, do you make great movies? The Boys is great television. Therefore, it works. Deadpool are great movies. Therefore, they work. The key to them working is not that they're dark or they're light or they're funny or that they're serious or they're, this in tone. None of that matters. All that matters is, do you make great content? Because they've made a lot of dark content that's been terrible and failed. They've made light content that's been terrible and failed. And they've made dark content that's been spectacular and worked, and light content, more light content, that's been spectacular and worked. So that's really the key, is making great movies. It's not about whatever formula you follow. All right. Thanks for that, B-Town. Next up, we've got Oscar Salicido. I hope I said that right. Writes, John, you always mention inappropriate questions will not be answered. Any examples? Yeah, I mean, for example, this happens all the time. People will try to use an open mic show that's meant to be about, whether it's the John Campea Show or open mic or an Ask Me Anything, and they see that as an opportunity to get free marketing for their own thing. So we'll often have somebody write in and go, hey, everybody, they'll send in a $5 super chat. Hey, everybody, go and check out my website at blah, blah, blah. It's people are here to listen to questions about movies and TV show. They're not here for you to give a pitch about your website. If you want to buy marketing, if you want to buy advertising space on my show, feel free. You can go ahead and do that. We charge about $4,000 a week for a sponsorship spot. So if you would like to become a sponsor of the John Campea Show podcast and advertise your mixtape, to advertise your YouTube short film, or to advertise your whatever, feel free. Sign up as a sponsor and we'll do it. But you're not going to get free. Don't use my show that people tune into to listen to movie discussion as some kind of a way to get free advertising or $5 advertising for your product. That's not what people come to the show to listen to. The audience is not here. It's like whenever you ever see when there's a Q&A at a live show and they do a Q&A saying, I wrote a script. Will you read my script? And then the whole audience will boo them. That's what our audience is doing to you when you write in to try to say, hey, everybody, go check out my website. This isn't the avenue to do that. We get a lot of people write in, because I don't know if people think that they're being supportive. I think sometimes people mean well, they think they're being supportive of me by doing this, but we get people who write in and goes, John, this and this YouTube channel is horrible. And they name a YouTube channel by name. It's like, I'm sorry, no, my YouTube channel, like I will talk about trends and I will talk about patterns we see on YouTube and in the space, but I do not by name insult other YouTube channels. I think I have made that mistake years and years and years ago. Like I've done that and I hated that I did that. But my YouTube channel, and I'll often see it in the live chat. I'll jump in the live chat sometimes when I see people like calling out specific YouTube channels and bashing on them, and I'll jump in. Some of you guys have seen me do it. I'll jump in just in the live chat and I'll type, guys, my YouTube channel and my live chat is not a place for you to come and bash other YouTube channels. Don't do it. So sometimes people write in stuff that's bashing a particular or specific by name YouTube channel, and I won't let that on my show. I will never let that on my show. Or somebody's writing in to make a personal insult about me or one of the other crew members or something like that. That I don't allow on my show. Like if you want to come in here and talk about movies and stuff, come on in and talk about movies and stuff. You want to talk about an iPad? Sure. Go ahead and do that too. Or like wanting to write in and talk about politics. I'm not talking about human rights issues. I'm talking about politics. It's like, no, this show is not a place for us to talk about politics. I'll talk human rights issues, but I'm not going to talk about politics. You know what I mean? So yeah, so there's a lot of different things that people try to send in on the show that is really strictly not appropriate for our show and that we won't do. Anyway, good question. Thanks for asking. All right. Next up, we've got Dakota Woods, who writes, "Hey, John, I sadly come to the conclusion today that I am no longer interested in Star Wars. Because of the toxicity of the fandom, it seems that people can't handle not everything in Star Wars can be great." Listen, I hit that realization myself a number of years ago. Like, I decided, like, I used to do Jedi Council. I mean, I created Jedi Council. I used to do Star Wars Talk Tuesdays, and I used to do, because I love Star Wars and I love being a fan. What stopped me from doing shows like that wasn't the quality of the shows we were getting or the movies we were getting, because some Star Wars stuff that's come out in recent years has been really great. Most people agree Rogue One is fantastic. Most people agree that seasons 1 and 2 of Mandalorian are fantastic. Most people agree Andor is spectacular. Like, there's been good stuff, right? There's been good stuff, and there's been terrible stuff. The things that made me stop doing Star Wars shows was how toxic the fandom had become. It just become, it's a unlivable, toxic, cancerous, garbage-filled cesspool. The Star Wars fandom. And that's what made me want to stop doing Star Wars content, dedicated Star Wars content. Maybe some of you haven't been around long enough, but you guys remember I had Star Wars Talk Tuesdays and I would do this and I would do that, but it's the fandom is just so toxic that it's just not fun. The fans have made Star Wars fandom a non-fun place to be. Because I can dislike Obi-Wan, and I do dislike Obi-Wan, and I can dislike Ahsoka, and I do dislike Ahsoka. I can dislike Mandalorian Season 3. I can dislike The Acolyte. I can dislike The Rise of Skywalker. I can dislike all those things as a fan, but I can still love talking about Star Wars. And if the fandom hadn't become such a toxic place, made more toxic by, that a certain corner of blogs and podcasts and YouTubers that feed into the toxicity, encouraging the toxicity. Even though there's been a lot of Star Wars stuff I don't like, I would still have fun talking about Star Wars, but so much of the fandom has made it not fun anymore. And they've just made it and they're turning off potential new fans and all that kind of, anyway, it really is sad. So I totally get where you're coming from, Dakota. I sadly really do understand where you're coming from. It's really too bad. All right. Next up, Lyndon Lansbury writes, thoughts on Chinatown turning 50. Is that how old that movie is? Dear God. I mean, I never watched Chinatown until I was probably in my mid-20s. Probably when I was in my mid-20s. But like, oh my God, that thing's turning 50. Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy. By the way, let me go to this for a second. Michael Gonzalez brings up something interesting. Says the fandom was bad before Disney. Here's the difference though. Because like what makes the fandom toxic is not that they dislike what they're seeing. Because I've seen a lot of Star Wars stuff in the last few years that I do not like. Acolyte, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Mandalorian Season 3, Rise of Skywalker. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff I don't like. Not liking something that's coming out of Star Wars is not what makes it toxic. To Michael Gonzalez's point, the fandom was bad before Disney. See, I remember, I'm old enough that I remember that when the prequels came out, I remember people screaming, George Lucas just raped my childhood, which was totally unreasonable. I remember, I mean, and I hated the prequels, but that was stupid to say. Or like, I remember the newscasts of people literally taking off their Jedi robes that they wore to a screening of The Phantom Menace, coming out and burning their robes in their backyard when they get home. Like, but here's the difference. This is what I think the difference is between, say, that prequel era and where we are now, and what denotes things being toxic or not. What makes a fandom turn toxic is not disliking the stuff they're watching. It's when you attack other fans for liking that which you don't like. That, number one, is the supreme sign of a weak mind and a weak person. And they deserve really more your sympathy and sadness than your ire. But is when you are somebody that attacks other people for liking something you don't like. See, back in the day, like when the prequels came out, now, granted, Twitter wasn't around and TikTok wasn't around and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it would have been a thing then too, but the technology wasn't there. But I remember a lot of conversations of, you liked The Phantom Menace? Are you crazy? I remember that. But what I didn't see at the time was, you like The Phantom Menace? You must be a paid Lucasfilm shill. You must be a paid shill. You're stupid if you like that. You're a sellout. If you're an idiot if you like that. Like, that was just not a part of any of the Star Wars circles I traveled in, Star Wars fandom circles I traveled in back when the prequels were coming out. A lot of people hated the prequels, but I didn't see people attacking others who did enjoy the prequel. I didn't see that. Like, that's why every time on my show, like even about The Acolyte, a show I completely hate, I'll go, hey, listen, if you like The Acolyte, I'm not trying to rain on your parade. If you like it, and that's awesome, and I'm jealous. I wish I liked it too, but for me, it's terrible, right? And that's fair. But that's a really big difference, I think, today between this era of Star Wars fandom versus the prequels era of Star Wars fandom. A lot of people hate some of the stuff we're getting out of Star Wars today. A lot of people hate a lot of the stuff we were getting in the prequel era. I think the big difference is today it's a lot more savage because the knuckle draggers, they will now organize and attack people who dare like something that they don't like. And I just don't think that was a part of the fandom before, at least not on this scale. So yeah, again, it's that so-called Star Wars fandom that's ruining Star Wars for a lot of people. On top of the fact that they're also putting out some crappy Star Wars content. I mean, there's that too. But I mean, yeah, it's just it kind of is what it is. All right. Next up, we go to Rudy, who writes, hey, John, you said that AMC A-List was just starting to make money before the pandemic. How's it doing now? Oh, I think it does very well for AMC. Yeah, because they went through all their building stages, all the debt stages of it. And the last time I read about something about it had to be 6, 7, 8 months ago. AMC has been a real saving grace for AMC because even as theaters are doing badly in certain rungs, like the first half of 2024, AMC A-List has been a real financial stabilizer for them. I mean, it hasn't stopped them from losing money, but as a program, it does pretty well for them, actually. All right. Good question, man. Next up, we've got Alex Von Gollum, who writes, there's nothing like experiencing movies in theaters. I completely agree. To hear the horn helm of Hammerhand shaking the auditorium, see Gandalf fireworks is priceless. Again, man, listen, it doesn't matter how big of a screen you have. I've got a 150-inch screen over here. I don't care how good your sound system is. I had, fortunately, a friend gift me a really nice Sonos surround sound system. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. But it's all crap. It's all garbage compared to the way movies were meant to be experienced in a theater. That is always the best way. Lord of the Rings is a great example of that. It's not the only example, but it's the really height kind of thing. It's just watching Lord of the Rings at home is just not the same experience, man. Just not the same experience. Watching movies in theaters, that's the way to experience them. All right. Next up, Astros writes, IMAX, laser, or Dolby Cinema for Deadpool and Wolverine. Listen, we are so lucky as movie fans that we have the premium formats that we have today, including IMAX and Dolby Cinema. And either one, you win. If you get to go see Deadpool and Wolverine in an IMAX, awesome. If you get to see it in a AMC Prime Dolby Cinema, awesome. It's both a win. I personally already have my tickets, and I am seeing it in the Dolby Cinema. I just really love the leather recliners, man. Both of them have great images. Both of them have great sound. But I will normally lean towards the Dolby just because the AMC Prime Dolby, because they've got those motorized big plush leather reclining seats that I really like sitting in when I'm watching a movie. So that's the way I'm probably going to see it. All right. Thanks for the question, man. Next up, Jake Camera writes, if you could only have, let me try this again. If you could only have one be made, would you rather see the Batman Part 2 or 3 or Ben Affleck's Batman movie? Ooh, okay. I love Matt Reeves as the Batman. I love that movie. I think it's great. And I'm very excited to see Part 2. But I'm going to say Ben Affleck's never made Batman movie. And the reason I'll say that is because I never got it. Right? Like I've gotten now Matt Reeves' Batman, and I know the sequel will be great. I know the sequel will be great, but I've had it, right? I've actually got to sample it. I never got to sample Ben Affleck's movie, which, by the way, some very reputable people in the business who read the script simply said, this is the best Batman script ever written. And I really would have loved to have seen it. Now, if I had not seen either, maybe the answer would be different. But because I've gotten a chance to at least have a taste of the Matt Reeves Batman, I would lean towards having the taste of something I didn't get to taste yet, which was Ben Affleck's Batman that he was going to make. So I'll lean towards that one. Great question. It's a real Sophie's choice, but I think I'd lean towards the Ben Affleck Batman myself. All right. Thanks for that, Jake. Next up, Notably 4 writes, love from India. Thank you so much. What are your thoughts on Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power Season 2? Thoughts on Indian cinema? Well, those are two completely different questions. And I don't live in India to take in a lot of Indian cinema, so I can't really comment on that. But I don't really have any thoughts on Lord of the Rings of Power Season 2 because I haven't seen it yet. Up until Shogun, there had never been a show I was more excited about than Lord of the Rings of Power, right? I'd never been as excited for a TV show than I was for Lord of the Rings of Power. Once they announced Shogun, that changed. Then it's Shogun, and I was disappointed by it. Now listen, I think this is very important to point out. I do not think that Lord of the Rings of Power was the train wreck that some people made it out to be. I thought they did certain things quite well. I thought, like every moment that it was Elrond and the dwarf together, I could have watched the whole season just being that, because I thought that was awesome. But overall, I was really disappointed. It just did not It wasn't nearly as good as I was hoping it would be. And what really made that stand out was the fact that it came out roughly the same time as House of the Dragon season 1. And we were all so excited because, George R.R. Martin said himself, I mean, this is awesome. We're going to have a Lord of the Rings show and a Game of Thrones show. This is awesome for all of us, right? And that's the right attitude. But House of the Dragon being so good just kind of amplified how disappointing Rings of Power was. So listen, going into season 2, here's my hope. My hope is that for season 2, they're able to build on the things that did work in season 1 and correct the mistakes they made in season 1. If they can do that, then we could be in for a really nice season of television. If they can do that. Whether they do or not, we're going to have to wait and see. But until I see the show, I can't really have any thoughts about the show because, I haven't seen it yet. All right, next up. Alex Von Gollum writes, something that has me intrigued is Master Soul. He's hiding something. Yes, he is. He said to Osha, later on, I'll explain everything. Love the character so much. The Lee Jung-jae character of Master Soul in The Acolyte is the one shining light that is working in that show. Daphne Keene's character, I like Daphne Keene. The character's fine. The performances we're getting out of the actress who plays May and Osha is fine. But amidst all the stuff that does not work in that show, the one truly shining thing for me that is the one real redeeming quality of this show is Lee Jung-jae's soul. This character works for me. It's the only thing that really works for me, but that character works for me. So I am very intrigued to find out what this secret is. That ultimately is really the big mystery, right? Like, what is it the Jedi did back on Osha and May's home world that has May so angry? What did they do? What did they do that the one floating Jedi said, we thought we were doing the right thing? What is it? You're right. I am curious to know what that was. And again, Soul is the one redeeming thing about the show for me. So hopefully we'll get some answers and hopefully we'll get a better episode out of episode 5 than we have so far. That's the hope at any rate. All right. Next up. Jake Camera writes in again. How do you balance faith with modern science? I am one of these people that I have never believed personally that faith or modern science are in contradiction of each other. To me, science, the way like older theologians used to look at it was science is fantastic because science, again, I'm not saying you have to agree with this. I'm just saying this has been an old way of looking at things that I happen to appreciate. That their belief is science is a wonderful gift because it helps us understand the world that God created. That's the traditional. That's why like the biggest medical advancements and hospitals and things like that, usually all done by faith organizations historically, right? So for me, science has always been, even when I was in Bible college and seminary and stuff like that, and I'm only speaking for myself, modern science has been an amazing thing because it helps us understand creation, right? So I think science is a great thing. So I've never understood anybody who thinks like, I've never understood people of faith seeing science as a bad thing or education as a bad thing. Yeah, to me, science just is our tools given to us to help us understand creation. Again, there's a lot of people who don't agree with that, and that's perfectly fine, but you asked me the question, so I'll answer it. So yeah, I have never personally seen the two being in conflict with each other. If anything else, they help us understand each other, but that's just me, whatever. All right, next up. Goose Comics writes, Nintendo recently announced the return of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is cool, featuring X-Men and other favorites. Unavailable since 2013. This follows the success of X-Men 97. With growing popularity, can it surpass the MCU? No. That will never happen. we're talking a $40 billion film franchise. So no, that will never surpass the popularity of the MCU. No way, no how. I might be wrong about that. I might be wrong, but you've asked me a question, and my first response to that, and that could end up being wrong, but my first response to that is no, never. That will not happen. That will absolutely not happen. Because X-Men 97, by the way, is not that popular. I loved it. I thought it was great, but it's not that popular. So it just is what it is. All right. Next up, where are we at? Richard McCart writes, heard Deadpool meets Batflick in movie. Possible? There's a difference between possible and likely, right? Those are two different things. Is it possible? Everything is possible. There's almost nothing I could mention that isn't at least a possibility. Possible suggests that there is a way in which it could happen. So sure, it's possible, but is it likely? Almost zero. Almost zero. So possible? Yeah, there's a way it could happen. So it's possible, but no, I would bet $1 million that it would not. So, possible, yes. Likely, absolutely not. So that's my guess at any rate. All right. Next up. Let's see here. Bobby Jackson writes, Sean Levy said in an interview that Deadpool and Wolverine is not Deadpool 3. Do you think there is a specific reason for not having this as part 3? Yes, because if you call it part 3, there's a number of business consequences to calling it part 3. If it is, it's why Daredevil, even though now they're making it a part of the Netflix Daredevil canon, because originally, remember, it wasn't going to be. This was going to be a brand new Daredevil that Charlie Cox is playing, but it's not the same Daredevil from Netflix. That's the way it was going to be. And then recently, Kevin Feige scrapped the show, rejuvenated it, and said, yes, now this is the same Daredevil, but they're still not calling it Daredevil Season 4. Because if you do call it Season 4, then contracts people had with the old show have to now be honored. There's a whole bunch of things that start happening if it is still the same franchise. So while this is clearly our Deadpool, they can't call it Deadpool 3 because Deadpools 1 and 2 were not part of the MCU. It was a totally different studio. If you call it Deadpool 3, any contracts you had with people that were going to be a part of the ongoing franchise, you would have to now honor. If it's not Deadpool 3, if it's a new thing, you don't. So there's a whole bunch of things that go into it like that. So that's why, I still call it Deadpool 3, and I will always probably call it Deadpool 3 just because it's easier than saying Deadpool and Wolverine. I just say Deadpool 3. But everybody knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, there's a lot of different reasons why that go into that. All right. Next up, we've got Raza, who writes, hey, John, will you be going to John Williams' concert in July? 100%. We got our tickets. Which date? I'd love to try to see you there. I actually don't know which day because he usually does the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Normally, Ann and I will go to the Saturday show. But we have gone to the Friday one once or twice. I honestly don't know which day we're going. Ann's the one who got our tickets. So, I don't know, but I am 100%. I've gone to the John Williams concert every year, I think for the last 9 years. I go every single year. I never miss the Maestro of the Movies concert. Go every single year at the Hollywood Bowl. It's fantastic. If you live anywhere near LA, go to see it because this is probably going to be his last one. I've been saying that for the last 5 years. But I really think this is going to be his last one. So if you live anywhere near the LA area, try to get yourself some tickets to go see John Williams in concert with the Maestro of the Movies thing because it's so good. All right. Next up, Booley Tan writes, I recall The Boys and Reacher first seasons dropped entirely and later seasons dropped weekly. I'm sure Fallout Season 2 will drop weekly. I can't wait. I could be wrong about this, but I don't think The Boys dropped its entire season at once, did they? I thought they dropped the first number of episodes and then went weekly. I might not be remembering that correctly. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, man, it just dropping all your episodes at once is stupid. You miss out on building word of mouth. You miss out on building momentum if your show is good, because I said this would happen and it did. About 5 or 6 days, like in the first few days that Fallout dropped, we got tons of questions coming in. Everybody wanted to talk about Fallout, right? The first couple of days. But I said, you watch. After a week, no one's going to be writing in about Fallout. Everybody's going to have moved on. No one's going to be talking about it anymore. I can't remember the last time we got a question about Fallout. When Mandalorian came out, let's go even further back than that. When WandaVision came out, the number one topic of conversation every single day for 2 months was WandaVision questions. Everybody, every single day, without failure, the number one topic of conversation that our viewers consistently talked about and sent in questions about and theories and ideas and whatever was always WandaVision. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It got bigger every single day. And for months, that was the number one topic of conversation around fandom. Fallout came and went in a matter of days, which sucks because the show's really good. If they had dropped Fallout week after week, you would have seen the audience grow week after week with it. It would have been the dominant point of conversation across all of fandom. People have been talking about it every single week for months. Instead, they dropped it. Everybody got excited about it for a few days, and then no more questions came in about it. Everybody moved on because everybody had watched it, and everybody's watching at different points, so they can't even talk to their friends about it. And so it was done. When you release a show week after week, everybody's at the same point. Everybody's talking about the same episodes. They can talk to their friends because they're not worried about, wait, I'm on episode 3. What are you on right now? Well, I'm on episode 7. Okay. Don't tell me anything. It's not a matter of opinion. It's a proven statistical fact now. They've released the studies on it. When you put out these shows week after week, if your show's good, it does better for your show than if you drop it all at once. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. So I really hope next time they do a proper release of the show for Fallout Season 2 and do a week after week release. I think that's the best way. That'll be best for the show. It'll be best for the fandom. That's just the better way to do it. Anyway. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got, where are we at? That was Booley Tan who writes, Stargirl next writes, Julie Christie is one of my favorite classical actresses of the 60s. I love that era, music, fashion, etc. Do you like any of her movies? I'm going to be honest with you, not off the top of my head. Just straight up, not off the top of my head. With all the classics that I've watched, I'm not like nearly as well versed in a lot of stuff like way before I was born, like the 60s, the 50s. I can pull out all and talk about all the various classics and stuff like that, but stuff like that, not really my thing, to be honest with you. So no, honestly, I can't. And I'm sure there's some really hardcore movie files who could, but that's like talking a lot about individual performers in the 60s. There's a few that I could, but Julie Christie's not one of them, to be honest with you. All right. I could sit here and try to pretend like I know what I'm talking about. Like while you guys are watching me, I could very like subtly pull up IMDb and go and then peek my eyes over and look, but I'm just going to be honest with you. No, I don't. I'm always going to be honest with you. All right. Let's see. Next up. Why can't I find my cursor? There it is. Next up. Why can't I bring it up? There it is. Leo Franco writes, one of two. Hey, John, I was curious. With the new Spaceball movie being worked on, do you think that they will try to spoof a modern Star Wars? Oh, yeah, definitely. The original was a spoof that had its own plot. I hope they would continue that again by telling its own story. Tell us your thoughts. That's exactly what I think they're going to do with the second one, because Mel Brooks is still producing it. Spaceballs, while it is absolutely a Star Wars spoof, it was also its own story, right? They weren't rushing out to try to stop Darth Vader from using his Death Star to blow up Alderaan or the moon of Alderaan. it had its own story, right? While spoofing at the same time. I think that's what they will do with this one as well. They will have a story with characters that are representative spoofs of other characters in Star Wars films. They'll have some events that are spoofs of events in other Star Wars and other sci-fi films. But at the end of the day, it would also just kind of be its own story. You know, where Spaceballs, it was Spaceball 1 was trying to, they were running out of air. They used their giant new made ship to go from blow to suck and to take the air from Princess Vespa's homeworld to bring that air back to Spaceball 1. But, you know, so that's their plot. It's its own thing, as silly as it is. And in and of itself is a spoof. So yeah, I do think it'll do that. It won't be like a Meet the Spartans or anything like that. It won't be anything like that. At least I really hope it's not. All right, let's see here. Thank you for that, Leo. Next up, we got Fire Up the Blades, who sends in a $20 super chat and writes, where the hell is the Toxic Avengers remake? That is all. I don't know, because correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the guy who played Trask in X-Men Days of Future Past and from Game of Thrones, why am I freezing on his name? Peter Dinklage. Wasn't that Peter Dinklage? Thank you, Niles, by the way. Wasn't that Peter Dinklage's movie? Like, wasn't Peter Dinklage supposed to be in the Toxic Avenger remake? I thought, and more than that, I thought I remember that they shot the movie. Like, I don't think they just announced it. I think they shot it. I could be totally wrong about that. I could be 100% wrong about that, but I think I remember that being the case. And to answer your question, I have no idea. I totally forgot about the movie, to be honest with you, till you just brought it up. I totally forgot that was even a thing, but I think they shot it. So like Nerds Engage is saying they did with Elijah Wood and they need distribution. So what? So they made the movie and they just don't have a distributor? So honestly, look, I have no idea what was going on with that movie. I have no idea what state it's in. I have no idea if they completed it, if they're just trying to find a distributor. If not, maybe to go straight to streaming. But you got Peter Dinklage in it, so something's going to happen to it. I don't know what. It does. And yeah, life is so rich. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more times than you think. A movie gets made, they're never able to find a distributor for it, and we never see it the light of days. But anyway, hopefully at some point it'll pop up here on our radars. All right. Let's see. Next up, Jerome writes, did you hear about Starlight's actress getting harassed? Yeah, which is really pathetic. I honestly don't know why people harass and attack actors in movies. I have no idea why. It's really kind of pathetic. Like it says more about the people who do it. They're pathetic people than anything else. All right. Next up, we've got, where are we at here? We are at, Justin is a square writes, 1 of 2. Hey, John, hopefully this brings a smile to your face. I just wanted to tell you what my all-time favorite Campea moment is. Oh dear. And doesn't follow that up. It's probably a little bit further up. Is it? It's not there. Okay. Maybe it pops up later. Next, Jerome writes, I think Butcher is hallucinating Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Ooh, you know what? That could be true because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Butcher have been in a scene where another character is there. Right? Like, I don't think anybody else has seen the Jeffrey Dean Morgan character. Like, he's obviously hallucinating his dead wife, but nobody else has been in the room with Butcher and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. You could be onto something, dude. You really could be. That might be a legit thing. All right. Next up. That's a really good option. I didn't even think about that. Reverend Eng writes, Have you ever seen the show Banshee with Anthony Starr? I never did, actually. If not, it's nonstop from start to finish. Awesome show, and thanks for all you do as well. Yeah, I have had people write in, especially when the season 1 came out. A lot of people wrote in and asked me, have you seen Banshee? And I never did. I honestly don't even know anything about it other than the fact that I've had a bunch of people write in over the years to say, John, you got to see Banshee. But I don't actually know anything about it. And yeah, so I don't know. I never got around to it, but I'll keep my eye open for it, Reverend. So thanks for keeping that on my radar. I appreciate that. All right. Let's see. Conrad Drover writes, my wife, who doesn't know anything about wild civil war of Star Wars fandom, and she replied, can't people just watch the ones they like? Genius. Oh, I know. Like, if you watch something and you don't like it, let's say let's just take a very specific example, me with The Acolyte episode 4. Okay. I really didn't like it. I hated it. I thought it was terrible. Why can't people just watch something, and if they don't like it, go, I really didn't like that. I thought it was terrible. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next thing now. I'll never understand that. I, as a lifelong, like most of these so-called Star Wars fans, listen, kid, I've been watching Star Wars and adoring Star Wars and memorizing Star Wars probably before some of you were born. So I get being a passionate fan. I get that. But if you're really passionate, it doesn't matter how passionate a fan you are about something. If you don't like it, watch it, say, I didn't like it, and then move on. And if somebody asks you later, well, why didn't I say, well, I didn't like the story buildup. I didn't like how there's no B-level narratives going on. I don't like how they had this particular buildup to, like, for me, like a Jedi Wookiee fight, and they teased it and teased it and they teased it. And then the Wookiee just dies off screen. And I thought that was a fundamental narrative storytelling mistake of abandoning your audience and all that. Like, yeah, but then move on. You talk about, these people suck. I hate these people. I never want them to make anything again. And they touched me in places that they shouldn't touch me. And I'll just never get that. I'll never understand that. Right? Like, I watch Obi-Wan, didn't like it, talked about why I didn't like it, and then I moved on and I looked forward to hopefully the next Star Wars thing, and hopefully the next Star Wars thing is something that I like. Unfortunately, the next Star Wars thing was, I believe, Ahsoka. I didn't like that either, but that's okay. I watched Ahsoka. I didn't like it. Okay, I'll just look forward to the next Star Wars thing, and I hope that that'll be good. And then came along The Acolyte, and it's not very good. Okay, to me, The Acolyte is not very good. So I'll just hope that the next thing is good, rather than becoming this mosh pit of crybabies. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's as bad as some Star Wars has been. It is the Star Wars fandom that is turning more people off Star Wars than the subpar Star Wars content that we've been getting. And I say this as somebody who really hasn't liked a lot of the Star Wars we've gotten recently, but it's an unfortunate thing, but it's a truism nonetheless. All right. Let's see. Josie writes, John, don't retire. We need 4 Avengers. We need 4 Avengers 5 and 6. Yeah, I mean, look, here's kind of my plan for retirement right now. I am still going to be a massive film fan, and I am still going to feel this irresistible urge to talk about movies. What I will probably do once I retire is and I've talked about this for the last year or so, I will probably continue to do an audio podcast, audio only, not YouTube, but an audio only podcast a couple times a week. Because it's really easy to do an audio podcast. I mean, way more so than doing YouTube videos. I can do an audio podcast from anywhere because I plan on doing a lot of traveling, a lot of camping, a lot of adventuring and stuff like that. So all I have to do is bring along my laptop and a microphone. And I can do an audio podcast. So I will probably still continue to do that. But yeah, so so you'll hear me talk about Avengers 5 and 6 one way or the other. One way or the other, you'll hear me talk about Avengers 5 and 6. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got, there's part 2. I remember this. Justin wrote in a little bit earlier with a part 1 of 2 and said, John, my favorite moment is when you interrupted the Collider Arrow after show a number of times just to celebrate what happened to Laurel Lance. For those of you who don't remember, I used to love the Arrow show. I loved it. I absolutely do. I still love like Stephen Amell and stuff like that. But to me, the show jumped the shark at some point and I kind of tapped out. And kind of the poster child for that was the character, not the actress. I love the actress, but the Laurel Lance character, who writers did this inexplicable thing where they had her go and take some night boxing classes. I don't know if any of you guys remember watching this in Arrow, but in Arrow, the Laurel Lance character literally started going to the local YMCA and took a couple of night boxing classes. And then all of a sudden, she was Captain Buckles. She had this full superhero outfit with 1,000,000 buckles on them. Do you remember that? I called her Captain Buckles. And suddenly she was out fighting crime. She was a superhero because she went to the YMCA and took some boxing lessons. And like, oh my God, like if there's anything that's a really good symbol of how this show has kind of jumped the shark, it's that. So for fun, I was still producing the Arrow after show on Collider. And I think my wife, Ann, was still on that show. So I had arranged it in advance because everybody knew I didn't like that aspect of the show, what they did with that particular character. So when the show killed off Laurel Lance, I went out to the store. I bought a party hat and one of those, those things you blow into and goes beep, like it unrolls and it makes a loud like whistle sound, beep beep, and I got some confetti and I came running onto set of the Arrow after show and I go, yeah, Laurel's dead. And what did I said? I think who was hosting at the time? Who was the main host at the time? Might have been Jason. Jason might have been the main host at the time. And like I came running on to the set going, woo, and I'm blowing my party whistles. And I came up to, I think it was Jason I came up to and I went, hey, Jason. He goes, what? I go, knock, knock. He said, who's there? And I go, not Laurel, because she's dead. Woo! And I blew the whistle and I ran around like an idiot in the circle. That was a fun moment. And it was all just done in fun. But yeah, I knock, knock. Who's there? Not Laurel, because she's dead. I think that was the funniest thing I've ever said. I think that's probably out of all the things, all the times in my career I've tried to be funny and have never been funny. I think the funniest thing I ever said on camera on a show was knock, knock. Who's there? Not Laurel, because she's dead. And then blow the party whistle. Anyway, yeah, that was a fun time. That was a fun time. And oh my gosh. And that's it. That'll do. We got through all of them. Oh my goodness. We got through all the super chats. You know what, guys? I still got a few minutes here. I got a couple of minutes. So I think what I will do for the next remaining couple of minutes is I will come over and take some questions just from you guys in the live chat. Now, do me a favor, look at the live chat. If you have a question, do this for me. Format it like this. In all capital letters, write question, then write your question. So that way I know you're asking me a question and not that you're not just talking amongst yourselves or whatever. So, yes, let's see here. Josh is writing, question, which one will you be more excited about, Megan 2 or the Black Phone 2? I really like Megan, but I really like the Black Phone, so I'd be more into the Black Phone 2. Rachel McKnight, right? What is the worst movie you've ever walked out of? I think it was called, the one that had like 50 stars in it was called like Movie 63 or so. You remember the one I'm talking about? That had like 50 different stars in it, and the whole movie was just a bunch of little sketches, and I think it was called like Movie 63 or something, and so I walked out of that. Let's see. Life is So Rich writes, question, do you use a softbox for lighting? Looking to purchase one soon. Back in the old studio I did, but I currently Do not. And I have no way of showing. I just use these. They're flat circle. They're completely flat, like this thick, circular LED lights. I have one on each side of me, and they just cast a really nice soft light. Now, back in the old studio, we use these giant lights with these big soft boxes, and those can be really good. But I also find these little these flat LED lights are actually pretty good too. Let me see if I can find a picture of one. Just so I can show what I'm talking about. Video production lights. Let me see if I can find something here that's a good representation of what I have. Well, I mean, okay, so they're kind of like this. They're kind of like this, but they're a little bit bigger. So these are the ones you see on the frame are about this big. The ones I have are about this big, and they're just a clear color across the front, and they're relatively inexpensive, and they do a really good job. I like them. So yeah, that's what I personally use, is those things. Okay. Let's see here. Equis writes, have you watched The Boys episode 4, and are you going to talk about it? Well, we can tell who wasn't here for the first half of the show, because I did talk about The Boys episode 4. I didn't do an open spoiler discussion about it. I won't be able to, because Ann and I are going away for the weekend, so I'm not going to be able to do an open spoiler discussion about The Boys episode 4, but I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really, really great. Really loved it. Let's see. Lion Fan writes, any idea when Daredevil new show comes out? Not until I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think until 2025. Chasm writes, what do you think of JJ Redick becoming the head coach of the Lakers? I think I'm done with the Lakers. I'm done. I'm not going to go to any more games. I'm not going to support them in any way. If you're going to be so fucking stupid that you're going to go out and hire somebody who has 0 games coaching experience, not in the minors, not at college, not as an assistant coach, if you're going to be so fucking stupid, so unbelievably fucking stupid that you're going to run out and hire a head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers who has 0 games coaching experience, you're fucking dead to me. You're dead to me. No, I'm not going to support the Lakers in any way, shape, or form anymore. If they're going to be that stupid and be that disrespectful to the game, be that disrespectful to their fans, be that disrespectful to their players, fuck them. The Lakers are absolutely, completely dead to me. 100% dead to me. All right. Let's see. I'm looking for another question. Here we go. Lucas is asking, Andor or House of the Dragon? Really close, but I'm going to say Andor. They're both absolutely fabulous. They're both absolutely amazing. I love them both, but I would give the slight edge to Andor. Let's see. Joshua's writing, any thoughts of the upcoming movie Long Legs? It looks good. It does look good. I mean, we're talking about the Nicolas Cage one, right? Does look really good. I hope it's good. I'll be looking forward to watching it. Let's see. Kenneth Carley writes, question, why do you think, John, that Superman has had a hard time on the big screen in recent years, but done so well on TV? It hasn't. Look, guys, I don't know what world we're all living in, but it hasn't done that well on TV. Like, if you actually look at the numbers, Superman, and listen, I really like, or at least I did, the Superman and Lois show. It's really, I thought it was really quite good for what it was, but like nobody watches it. I mean, that's just the reality. Like nobody watches it. Like far more people watch Superman on the big screen, quality aside. A lot more people watched the stuff in the movies than they did, than they do watch the TV show. It's just never, it's on CW, then moved over, but it's never had big numbers or anything like that. But they did some quality stuff though. They did some quality stuff. All right. I'm JMS writes, are you excited for the upcoming Fantastic Four movie? Absolutely. They got a terrific director. They got a really good screenwriter. I love the cast. look, the movie might end up being terrible. Like any movie can end up being terrible. 100% it could, but I really like what I'm seeing so far. So I'm very excited about it. Super excited about it. Let's see. Some of the questions you guys are writing are too long. I don't have time to read them over. This is good. The antagonistic anonymous. What do you think happened to Billy Butcher during the blackout against his fight? Well, look, clearly what we now know is that Billy took more Compound V, and it did something to him, because we've all seen the worm swimming around under his skin, right? It did something to him, and whatever it is came out to kill that dude. So I don't know what it is, but I'm really liking it. I'm really, really liking it. So we'll see. All right, guys. And that'll do it for today's little episode of Ask Me Anything. Thank you so much for hanging out with me here, guys, this evening. Glad to have you guys here. Big thank you to all you guys who sent in questions. Number one, because you gave us interesting things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as I did it. So thank you guys so much. And everybody involved with the show, thanks you so much for your ongoing support, guys. That will do it for me. No John Campea Show tomorrow. I actually got to let the guys know I'm going to be giving them the day off for that, but we will be back, of course. Make sure you guys come back and join us. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. So that'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.